Okay, so this video is gonna kind of continue what I've been driving at in the previous videos. Okay, so contemplation and meditation, and also the importance for having a void, having the need for a silent mind. Now, in the previous video, I think I was mentioning B. Allen Wallace and his attempt to explain certain claims that the mystics uh, say about the need for emptiness and void. And now, this sort of aspect, I guess you could say, is could also be seen as openness as well, in a more relative human sense, because it's not that we're creating a black hole in our brains. I mean, it may be perceived as that actually. If you've ever had an experience where the mind suddenly shuts up, it almost feels like you've just become a sentient black hole. Um, but at the same time, what it's really asking for is that the mind to stop using to kind of silence itself to listen, and this sort of listening, this sort of awareness. And you don't have to be physically still, but you mentally you have to be very open and pliable. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. So I guess you could see it like this, and he was sort of explaining it like this as well. Um, since our consciousness, according to some of the mystics, is from a higher dimension, and our brains are like um, are almost like specific organs that have learned to tap into consciousness in a way, um, just as eyes have learned to tap into light or other forms of seeing. Um, there is a certain usefulness in having an active mind, just like it's usefulness having an active eye. But if we sort of let go of our activities, the eye is no longer busy, or the mind is no longer busy, and the energy that was the eye or the mind, so to speak, was using can now be used for attentiveness and awareness. So all of a sudden, you begin to learn more about the mind and its nature by just simply resting and becoming aware. Um, this sort of openness, it makes sense because if you're busy using your mind, if you're busy losing yourself in your thoughts and thinking things through and going through conceptual processes and rationalization, then you tend to you can sort of lose sight of this sort of any kind of greater awareness. If you're busy using your mind, it's hard to learn something new about it. It's almost as if I mean, that's really it. Uh, if you're using your eye, looking at all these different things, instead of trying to trace back how you see by observing the way you see things, then yeah, of course you're gonna get distracted. Your energy's gonna be used up for the more relative aspects of seeing. In the same way, the mind's eye, um, interestingly enough, I think that's used in the Bible with your mind's eye. I don't know. Anyway, um, if we see through our mind's eye, then we're gonna have to sort of relax our focus a little bit and sort of begin to perceive everything just as it is. And when you do that, you can kind of follow the sight back to its original source in a way. You can sort of see the true nature of seeing, the true nature of our development. And this is why Buddhism and contemplative practices, although sometimes people, misuse them or mislead them or aren't able to see this, it's a wonderful way combined with any kind of psychoanalytic process to kind of learn about yourself. And it's not only a way to experience enlightenment, but it is also a way to kind of um, really let go of our own insecurities, our issues, our boundaries, our emotional walls. I mean, this stuff it's all there. And if we do take the time to sort of step back and start to listen, stuff gets noticed. We begin to notice things about ourselves in the same way with our mind's eye. So meditation can be seen as sort of like a double tool. I mean, it's a tool for enlightenment, so to speak, recognition of the ultimate reality, the grounding of being, and also on the way of recognizing, you kind of notice things about yourself that you didn't notice before, that were harder to notice because you were seeing from another point of view. You're too trapped in the everyday experiences. Everything was too relative. Kind of, you weren't seeing the forest through the trees. So meditation is a way to really kind of, it is a way to sort of step back and just perceive for a while. And I think that's why it's very important um, to cultivate that sort of practice. Um, and I think that's basically what Alan Wallace was saying about silent mind. He was focusing more on the quantum physical level, which is, voidness and all that, but um, voidness being a empty space or a void has more potential than a filled space. Somehow it has more energy. Um, we can use this as an analogy for meditation. A empty mind has more potential and energy and creative force and potential for development and growth than a mind that is busy and being used up. So if we can train our minds to kind of rest in this sort of deeper awareness, this deeper, if we can train our mind's eye to do this, then we won't need to necessarily struggle as much or suffer as much as the Buddha said, or even get confused as much about this reality. And in the process, if we go deep down enough, if we continue our practice in our tradition of growing in this emptiness, certain things begin to happen. Um, according to some practitioners in East and West, you begin to perceive past lives. You begin to perceive things that are somehow connected, or you begin to access these higher dimensions of consciousness because you're slowly beginning to remember. You're resonating with a more complete and whole form. The mind's eye, is evolving and growing. And just in the same way that our eyes have evolved and grown since, the primeval eyes of, I don't know, frogs and fish and insects, which are complex in their own right. Um, the modern eye, I guess you could say, has become very keen, and there are other eyes that are more developed, so to speak. But it's besides the point. Basically, training our mind's eye is a way of growth and development and evolution. And seeing this from like an evolutionary perspective, this is fascinating. Perhaps, evolution has become more complex over time. Does this mean that there's some kind of greater meaning to it? To evolution in and of itself? Is this some kind of greater unfolding of spirit then? Because it's very interesting. If we can tap into the physical world's resources, and we can tap into the mental world's resources, perhaps there are other resources to tap into that our minds have kind of grown into. So really, we've developed these sensitive eye organs, these awareness organs, which consciousness pours into. It's just a very interesting philosophical perspective. May or may not be correct, but I believe at least, completely compatible with modern physics, with modern cosmology, and isn't necessarily so restrictive to a bare empirical world devoid of meaning, and not just a sentimental meaning, as some people would like you to believe, that we're just looking for sentiment, we're just looking for meaning and self-preservation. That's, of course, a part of it, but certainly when you begin to access these things and see these things and think about it, you realize it is not just some kind of sentiment, the desire to be needed, or the desire for meaning. It's not just meaning for meaning in and of itself. It's something else we're learning to perceive, which is interesting in and of itself. We're somehow learning to perceive some kind of greater consciousness, and that may or may not be part of our evolution. Perhaps this randomness is needed for, and the complete story of natural selection is needed for this. Who knows? This is all going besides the point because I was talking about meditation. But sorry about that. I hope it was interesting, and feel free to comment or make a response video. And yeah, I really like to hope to get into this sort of dialogue about this stuff and kind of explore it. But yeah, thanks for listening.